Hi, this is Bob Papa, voice of the New York Football Giants, and this is the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast.
Welcome back, Giants fans, to the latest edition of the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. As always, proudly in association with Andy's Man Club. Lads, remember, it is okay to talk. Kept Cup mate tonight, so we are 100% British, but absolutely still 100% Giants, as myself, Shane, and producer Craig, back to bring you the latest from the first week of camp. And we'll also be rounding out our state of play roster breakdown, finishing off tonight with the mammoth list of cornerbacks, so we've got that to come later on. Plus, we'll give you the lowdown on the final episode of Hard Knocks off-season, which aired last night. Again, make sure you cover your ears for that part if you haven't watched it yet. So another jam-packed show tonight, lads. How are we doing?
Yeah, not bad. It's good to be back on with you guys. Shame Kev couldn't be with us again tonight, but hopefully we're all on next week. I'm hoping. I want to say, but kind of in a way, be kind of glad to get these position things done, because once they're out the way, that means we're closer to the season starting, and quarterback should be an interesting conversation. Is the role still there potentially? We'll kind of touch on the cornerback position in regards to what happened in Hard Knocks as well. So last but not least, to get into it.
Yeah, it kind of feels a bit sad now. We're sort of at the end of Hard Knocks. Hard Knocks is done. All 5 episodes are now been aired. We've watched all 5, and we'll do like a complete breakdown next week. But yeah, it was. I've got thoughts on it on the final episode. We're obviously going to get into that in a bit, but it was a good series.
It was very good. It was a bittersweet moment this afternoon when I finished watching it, I must say. But it was a great series, and yeah, we'll get into Hard Knocks later and also next week as well. But yeah, fantastic series, and just again, like we said last week, we wish there was more. We want more, and it's just a shame we can't have more than 5 episodes. But yeah, looking forward to talking about that later on this evening, and everything else that's to come as well. Looking forward to getting into cornerbacks. As usual, if you are watching live, get your thoughts and questions in by dropping them in the comments. We'll do our best to get them on screen and any questions you have answered. And don't forget to check out all of our socials, now streaming on Twitch as well. Just follow the links in the description, and feel free to give this video a big thumbs up if you're watching. Before we get into the news, we've got an exciting announcement to make. So, producer Craig, over to you for the details.
Yep. So we have the announcement of a week 1 meetup, which we will put on screen right now, and I will read out for all of our audio listeners. We will be attending for the second year in a row the full 10 yards kickoff. However, this year it is at Box in Brindley Place, Birmingham, which is I think opposite where Felson's was last year. So if anybody knows where Felson's is in Birmingham, it is around there. One thing to note at the moment is that full 10 yards are waiting on confirmation that we can show all the DAZN games, which obviously ours will be one of those. However, we're pretty confident that that will be the case, but obviously just keep that in mind. For any fans that fancy travelling up, there are multiple hotels around the area, including a travel lodge that myself and Dan stayed in last year, and that normally goes for about 35 quid. So it's pretty affordable. For any details and to register your interest, just go to the website on the screen, or for those who are listening, www.full10yards.co.uk, and click on the reserve your spot here part that's halfway down the page. Also choose your preferred 925 game if you want to say for a specific game, because they will accommodate that. I've had a look at the menu, and all the drinks that are there is reasonably priced. There's a massive selection. In fact, the food looks absolutely banging. So come join us. All 4 of us should be there, and it sounds like we'll also have a little contingency with us as well, so come and get involved.
Oh yeah, party time. Week 1. Let's hope it's a good start to the season, like last year.
So, still have flashbacks to that casino. Oh god.
I think I've still got PTSD from that.
Yeah.
It's
I still have PTSD from walking out the toilet and Craig going, "We missed the field goal." I'm like, "Shut up, man! You know, don't miss." Like, no, seriously, we missed.
For context on that, last season we went to Felsons. Unfortunately, Felsons couldn't show the late game where the Giants got absolutely trounced by the Cowboys, and it got to that point where right at the beginning of the game, Giants are lining up for a field goal, and Shane just goes, "Right, we're going to the loo because we know this is automatic." And I'm pretty sure Shane jinxed us for the entire season off that one. So it's all his fault.
Blame Shane.
On the tank
Blame Shane.
Tank train, week 1, let's go.
Yeah, true. That's true. But yeah, so I think it wasn't a great way to start the season, lads, was it? And I think it was all downhill from there. So yeah, looking forward to meeting up in week 1 again this year. Should be a great night. And anyone watching or listening, if you can make it down, feel free to make it down. I know it's obviously, if for those that don't live in Birmingham, obviously it might be a little bit of a trek, but like Craig said, for a hotel for 35, 40 quid, you can't really complain. Someone's put your head for the night, and let's face it, you come and join us and hopefully watch the Giants win week 1. So mega looking forward to that, mega excited for the first meet up of this year. And hopefully there'll be more to come later on in the year as well. So watch this space for that.
If anyone wants to live the high life as well, the Hyatt is £100 a night. You get a lot of football teams stay there night before game.
Make it rain if you've got that sort of money. I mean, again, even still, that's a fairly reasonable price. So
that's not bad at all for the Hyatt.
No, not at all. Exactly.
Birmingham are in League One, so don't know the caliber of footballer you'll get there now.
Yeah, well, of course, he's Stockport County staying there.
Well, there we go. All right. Yeah. Any more details you want to know? Let us know. Get in touch, and we'll point you in the right direction. First up, obviously, as usual, it's the latest Giant news. Shane, a big roster move that was announced yesterday.
Yes, so yesterday it was announced that the Giants had signed veteran guard Greg Van Roten, and in a corresponding move to that, this cornerback called Aaron Robinson was supposedly released. Still waiting for confirmation if that person ever existed, to be honest with you. Rumour has it there was a 3rd round pick back in 2021, which is the last year that Dave Gettleman drafted for us. That goes to say a lot, really, though. And we kind of never really seen a lot of him, to be honest with you. He started his rookie season on the pup list, meaning he didn't appear until week 8. The following season, he started week 1, but then needed an emergency appendectomy. Is that the right? Am I saying that right?
Yep.
Look at the Black Country, lads. Words like that.
It's a big word for you, Shane. Basically, he had his appendix out. There we go.
There we go. He did return in week 4, but then suffered a partially torn MCL and ACL, and that was the last we saw of him. In regards to Greg Van Roten, he's a bit of a journeyman vet. He spent time with 7 NFL teams, and most recently was with the Raiders, where he's offensive line coach Carmen Bricillo. During his season with Bricillo, he recorded his highest grade of his career was 75.3. And he's now going to go into the guard rotation with Stinney and will likely line up next to ex-teammate Illuminor on the right-hand side, with Runyon switching to left guard. So that's one new player in, one player out. Craig, what are your thoughts on both of those moves?
I mean, the Aaron Robinson one's a bit overdue, isn't it? We've spoken about this for a long time. I was quite happy because it gave me one less player to have to write up about on the cornerback review for later. However, we then signed another cornerback, but we'll go into him a bit later. Van Roten, any time that we can get a veteran presence that has previous with the current new coaching team, has previous with a current free agent who was one of our bigger signings of the summer, and somebody who, let's be honest, is a much better kind of foil signing than the last time we had to do that, which was Ben Bredesen, straight away, and has had a longer career than Bredesen. I'm all for it. The offensive line was an area of need. It was absolutely atrocious last year. We've addressed it, and now we're just addressing it on depth, because let's be honest, the amount of times that we've seen starters go down and we think, shit, we've got a backup coming in now. And a lot of our backups over the last few years have kind of been less on the air of kind of, oh, okay, it's a backup player, and more a case of, I hope that player doesn't see the field. Whereas I think we're slowly starting to turn the screw a little bit on some of those.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the fact that obviously Aaron Robinson was one of 2 Dave Gettleman players left on this roster, and now it's the prestigious honour now falls with Aziz Ojulari being the only Dave Gettleman player left on this roster.
From
I was
the 2021 class.
Yeah, like,
Daniel
that's what I meant
Jones
from that class, from that year. Yeah. No, I'm happy with those moves, both of them. I think Aaron Robertson, the potential that he had never materialised. We didn't really see much of him in terms of actually in the game either. And I'm not surprised in the slightest that he was let go. And it's always good to see, especially, like I said, we needed to address the offensive line. We addressed it, and now we've added depth to it as well. And in bringing in Van Roten, he's a lineman that has been there and done it, and he's been in those trenches, and he knows what it's like to play in this league. And yeah, he might not be the best, but he's serviceable. He's smart, tough, and dependable, clearly, because otherwise the coaches and the front office wouldn't have brought him in. So yeah, happy with that. Really, really happy with it. And I think even when we brought him in for a trial or test out earlier in the week or end of last week, whenever it was, I was really happy with it then. So the fact that we signed him is a really good sign. And Aaron Robinson, it's kind of no big loss, really, as bad as that sounds.
Yeah, it's always a good signing when it's pretty much universally loved by the Twitterverse.
True that.
There's not a lot of things that the Twitterverse agrees on, but when it can be a free agent signing, it's not a bad thing.
No, very true.
So,
All right, great.
Take it away, Mr. Madden ratings. I feel like is it Eli Manning who's the like guest evaluator this year after Ochosino last year, I think I saw. But yeah, the annual drip feed of Madden ratings has begun, and we know the ratings for our wide receivers, safeties, running backs, defensive linemen, offensive linemen, and edge rushers. The top-rated Giant so far, and likely overall, let's be honest, is Dexter Lawrence, who is rated at a 95. Some other notables: Andrew Thomas is 89. Illuminor is our next best offensive lineman at 75, which incidentally is the same as our other free agent signing, Runyon. We found out about this, Seamus said about this before the pod. JMS is a 68 rating, which seems pretty harshly low. But no one likes us, we don't care. Newly acquired edge rusher Brian Burns is an 86, while Thibodeau is a 76. Devin Singletary is an 81 rated running back. I don't know if there's a spin on running backs that they get slightly higher ratings than other positions, but that seems...
That's a surprise.
Well, yeah, it's not that Singletary is not an 81, it's just that he's higher than Thibodeau. Slayton is our top receiver at 78. And then rookie Neighbours is one behind on 77, along with Allen Robinson. And rookie Tyler Nubin is the top safety with 76 rating. Mills and Pinnock are both 74s. Obviously, over the next few days, EA Sports will continue to drop the Madden ratings. We still have tight ends and quarterbacks, linebackers all to come. So keep an eye out for those.
Corners as well.
Corners as well, which I'm sure we'll be absolutely delighted with our ratings at corner and special teams.
Banks has got to be at least an 84.
You reckon?
83, 84 minimum. But I can see him being an 80.
You'd like to think so. You'd like to think so.
It'd be a 79. You watch.
Yeah.
As Steve said.
They just look at the player and go. They just look at the player and goes, yeah, he plays for the Giants. That's 5 points off straight away.
Like so is that why Dexter Lawrence is a 95 and not a 99, yeah? Or is it
100%,
I said the other day? He has another dominant year, and next year he's a 98.
Guaranteed. Mate, if he was playing for the Dallas Cowboys or the Eagles, God forbid, he'd be a 99 shoe-in. 99, one of the best players on the game. But the fact he's a Giant, just graceful. But yeah, wait and see what those other positions come out, and let's have a laugh at some of the ratings because they're going to be funny, no doubt. All right, then, with us being a week into training camp, we're going to look at the good and the bad of the first week. And why not? Let's start off with the bad, get it out of the way. The offense hasn't really shown any real consistency, with reports being a mixed bag of overthrows, underthrows, bad snaps, false starts, and sacks, although they're not really counted in drills. The other bad is injuries. Why injuries again? Come on. Like, just what do we have to do to be fully healthy as a team? It's ridiculous. We had the first scare, obviously, on day one with Illuminor going down with that punch to the ribs from Dexter. I'm not surprised he sort of had to take a knee and had to walk off the field because I think a punch from Dexter to anyone to the ribs would make them drop to their knees. He did return the next day, and he's not really shown any effect since that, which is a good sign. Lawrence Cage has had a good camp so far. He's got a hamstring issue that could keep him out. Timon Fox also has a hamstring issue. JMS is dealing with a shoulder injury that's kept him sidelined, and Brian Burns has an ankle injury as well, but Daves is fairly confident with that. And there are some players that haven't even seen the field yet. Tyler Nubin's got a calf injury, which isn't a great sign considering, rookie wanting to come in and make a statement in camp. It'd hopefully be good to see him at some point very soon. And surprise, surprise, Evan Neal has been on the sidelines as well as he recovers from his ankle injury. So I don't think there was any surprise there, really, was there? The good, though, and there are some good things coming out of camp, believe it or not. There have been some standouts from potential bubble players. Deonte Johnson's getting a lot of praise. He's been mentioned multiple times by a friend of the pod, Bobby Skinner from Talking Giants, as somebody that could potentially push Michael McFadden for that number 2 spot next to Bobby O. Nick McCloud as well. He's always impressed when coming into games. He's had a really good camp at both slot and outside corner, so that's a promising sign for him. More about him later. Second-year safety Javarius Owens, who we talked about last week, snagged an interception in each of the last 2 days and has been playing really well as well. And Ryder Anderson has stood out whilst getting snaps with the ones too, so another positive sign. And again, Ryder Anderson, I think he was one of those guys that was name dropped by the coaches on Hard Knocks. So yeah, it's good to see him standing out, and clearly the coaches know what they're looking at, know what they can see. So it's good to hear he's doing well. And on Rookie Watch, Malik Neighbours seems to be just an instant highlight reel. He's setting the world on fire. When he's able to get the ball, and he's been outstanding in one-on-one drills, and it reminds me so much of Odell Beckham Jr. in his rookie year. Just the highlight reel sort of plays that he's making. Some of them are unbelievable. Andrew Phillips has also been having a good camp with some real sort of hard physicality, like some real hard tackling as well. And running back Turbo Miller has been turning heads with his speed. Going by that nickname Turbo, I'm not surprised that he's been turning heads with his speed. Yeah, so far camp has looked good, but injuries and inconsistent play on the offense, I think, is the right word for it. I mean, again, DJ coming back from his injury, not surprised he's not looked 100%, but there's still plenty of time to come in camp. Remember, we are only 1 week in. There's still plenty more training sessions to go. So, on the whole, I think fairly positive. But it'd be good to see what comes this week with that. All right.
I do have a question for you guys on that. So Connor Hughes of SNY has struck early, noting that Jones has been guilty of many of the offensive missteps, and that Daves and Joe Shane should be ready to turn to lock if necessary. Shane, is that harsh on Jones since he's only just come back from the ACL, or is this the reality of what he is?
Kind of both, in all honesty, in my opinion. I think that, you have got to give him a little bit of time. He's coming back from that ACL. but also at the same time, you do want to be looking at seeing what Locke can do in case during the season you feel that you need to move away from Jones, or there's a high possibility Jones gets injured. So you want to see what Locke can do as well. But I mean, like, in regards to the offensive missteps, I take him with a pinch of salt. I take all these tweets that are going out about how amazing Jones and Neighbours look and some of the passes with a pinch of salt. It's training camp. You can't overreact with one and underreact with another one. So the best way I do it personally is I just underreact with both of it, because I ain't being funny. Last year, the offense looked amazing. Last year, Waller looked amazing. Last year in training camp, everything was perfect, and then we seen what happened in week one, like we spoke to at the start of the show. So instead, I'm just taking the thing of, you know what, training camp is what it is. I'm more intrigued in what the rookies do in pre-season games if they get some snaps, the likes of Nubin, Phillips. I'm not too worried about Neighbours. I think we all know what Neighbours can potentially be. It's them kind of guys that were that were late round picks, mid round picks, and also undrafted free agents that I'm going to be paying attention to in pre-season. So, in regards with training camp, I think that you either look at everything that happens and react to it accordingly. Like, when someone goes good, you say it's good, and when someone's bad, you say it's bad. Or, like I said, I prefer to downplay it all. And it's week one. 8th of September against Minnesota that matters the most, not training camp.
Do you agree with that, Dan?
Facts. Yeah, I do. Fully agree with that. Yes, we all know what the Giants media, Giants Twitterverse is like. Any small thing that Daniel Jones does wrong is going to be blown up and out of context in terms of what actually happened. Like Shane said, it's the first week of camp. He's 8 months removed from tearing his ACL. So we can't expect him to be back fully healthy, fully fit, and going on all cylinders. And he's going to be rusty. He's going to make mistakes. So we can't really look too much into this. If it was like the offense was god awful in terms of like they just looked like they're incohesive and not really playing well together, then all right, I might be a bit concerned, but a few errant throws here, a couple of sacks there. Let's remember, half this offensive line is new. We've got a quarterback who's just returned from a long-term injury. We've got a new second-string quarterback in Drew Lock. It's not the end of the world if a quarterback throws an interception. It might. Why are we looking at it as a negative if a quarterback throws an interception? Why are we not looking at it as a positive that the DB has made a great play on that ball, on that throw? Why are we not looking at the defense has made a fantastic play rather than the offense is rubbish? The offense is rubbish. I think don't look at it too much. I think pre-season is pre-season. It is what it is. There's a chance for the outside guys that are trying to fight for a place on this roster to get that spot on the roster. Like Shane said, the main guys are good. They're there. They've got their place on the roster regardless. So for them, it's just a bit of a just a bit of fun, really. It's same as like pre-season in football. Nobody reads into pre-season results. United lost to Arsenal last week 2-1, but then they beat them 4-3 on penalties. I don't know how that works, but I don't really care because it's pre-season. We can't really look too much into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with what with what you guys are saying. I do think that there is a giant spin that seems to be happening on X, where it's very easy for people to report on the kind of, as Shane said, report on the bad without actually reporting on the good. And there have been a lot of defensive players who have kind of shown up. Peter Joyce has also said we have plenty of bad tape on Locke, and that's true. There is plenty of bad tape out there on Locke from training camp, but Locke's being blocked by our second string offensive line, which we all know what that offensive line is like, especially when the second string defense has Aziz Ojulari, who we expect good things from, and he's been able to prove it against first team defenses across the league. So yeah, it's going to be a long training camp, isn't it? When's week one?
8th of September. So just 5 weeks away. It's okay. It's fine.
Four shows of this then. 4 shows.
Yeah. I mean, the negatives are always going to outweigh the positives, aren't they? Let's face it. So yeah, don't read too much into training camp in terms of what happens. You know, if a player makes a great play, fantastic, well done. But at the end of the day, it's practice. Practice makes perfect.
Practice.
Yeah, and literally, we are talking about practice. So there we go. All right, let's move on and talk Hard Knocks. Spoiler alert, remember, if you don't want to know what happened on the final episode, avoid this next section. But last night, episode 5 of Hard Knocks off-season aired, with the draft taking centre stage in that final episode. Craig, take us through what happened.
I quite enjoyed going through this and kind of waxing lyrical and throwing little questions to you boys. So I'm a little bit upset that this is over after 5 weeks. When you're still recovering from shoulder surgery and the pain gets to you and you wake up at 6:30 in the morning, there is nothing better than to have a look and find the latest episode and get it downloaded and watched. And that is exactly what I did this morning. However, the first thing I kind of wanted to kind of put across to you guys, and it's something that Bobby Skinner on Talking Giants said on their review of it, and I think he's completely right, is that after everything that we saw for over the last 4 episodes, do you kind of feel like this one was like the feel-good fan service episode where it was a little bit light-hearted versus all the others? Shane?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't like it. I didn't like it. It was a little bit more chill. There was not so much drama. There wasn't really kind of much behind the scenes we hadn't seen, because obviously, you know, you could say, oh, okay, the war room, but then the Giants media team released the calls that they met to the players after the draft pick, and you kind of get the NFL cameras in the Giants draft room as well on the night of the draft. So it kind of felt like there wasn't really that much behind the scenes stuff other than kind of them, you know, being in Joe's office at the start of day 2, discussing a couple of different players, which we'll obviously come to shortly. So yeah, there wasn't really much kind of fun or nothing new. So I didn't really enjoy this episode.
Dan, is it fair to say that maybe you could say that this was the dessert kind of thing? We've had all the meaty stuff beforehand, and this is kind of like that end kind of pleaser.
Yeah, it's just a nice little sweetener to end the series, wasn't it? Yeah, I think it was. I enjoyed it. Like Shane said, there wasn't really much in the way of new things that we hadn't seen. The bits that I did like were just like the little snippets that you're hearing, like Shane talking with Dabes and Brandon Brown, and you know, just whilst they're in the war room and things like that obviously you wouldn't naturally hear. Obviously, you'd see the camera, but you wouldn't have any sound in the draft room. So it's those little sort of snippets were quite good. But it was just that feel-good factor at the end. And then the end, the shot right at the end with the drone panning out from Joe Shane's balcony, that was quite sweet. But at the same time, it was a teary moment because you knew it was coming to an end.
Yeah, exactly. So let's kind of get into the nitty-gritty of the episode. So the start had Joe kind of starting things off saying that, you know, normally you know how the top 10 is going to go. Like myself and Shane, I don't really think anybody else saw the Penix trade up happening. However, the Giants.
What makes you think you didn't see that coming?
It's on our TikTok if you need to see it.
Give it a little watch if you haven't.
The Giants brass were obviously right, as they predicted their top 5, even though they did worry a little bit around the Chargers going rogue and taking a wide receiver at 5. Obviously, the pick of Neighbours was going to be first up. We all know how the draft went. We know what players we picked. There's going to be no surprises there. But the nice thing that we did get was a little glimpse into why it takes so long for teams to make the pick. Like we've all wondered, this pick's so obvious. What are you waiting for? Like, why have you taken this down to 1 minute? And now we know, you know, Joe Shane kind of made the room aware of it straight away, saying we're going to take our time. And as Liev Schreiber said, who obviously is the narrator, Joe Shane knows that some teams might pay plenty to move up to 6. And lo and behold, 2 seconds after he says it, we get the answer, because Chris Ballard and the Colts are on the phone offering 15, 46, which was a second rounder, and a 2025 second rounder. So, Shane, are you taking that deal?
Probably not, but I'd probably give it more consideration, because to me that's where maybe some of the cornerbacks come into play potentially. I can understand why the Giants chose not to, and I've got no issue in choosing not to, but it might have just been more up for discussion, and who knows, maybe it was up for discussion more than what Hard Knocks actually showed. But yeah, I can understand why they chose not to move back to there when you got a player like Malik Neighbours fall to you.
Dan?
Yeah, man. I think moving back to 15 would have been too much of a drop. You know what we've seen. Obviously, they were looking at either quarterback or receiver, and dropping down to 15, looking at the receivers that were on the board at the time, it would have been, I think, a dumb move to move out of 6 and miss out on the likes of Neighbours, the likes of Deonte as well. So I think it was right for them to stick and pick a 6.
Yeah, and that's that's exactly what Joe was saying. He didn't want to move back that far. And then the Jets called. It kind of annoyed me a little bit that we didn't hear what the Jets offer was. I assume that there was a reason behind that. Maybe it was shut down quite quickly. I mean, Joe did say, I think we're going to stay pretty much as soon as he answered the phone. But it just, I don't know.
Maybe they didn't have an opportunity to even put the offer on the table.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It seemed like it's one of my small bugbears about the series is that phone conversations were very inconsistent with what they were allowing us to hear. I guess that was maybe because of what was said. Sometimes it just felt like a bit of consistency would have been nice. Obviously, we then get the pick with a few interesting quotes that kind of quell the Neighbours didn't want to come here rumors in a way. I still think sometimes he's a little 50-50.
At first, 100%, he was like,
Yeah, but I think he did turn around and say, you're jacked up, I'm jacked up. So I guess, I don't know if that's him trying to talk himself into it or if he was genuinely jacked up. But, later in the presser, he said he was ecstatic. He couldn't wait to bring his family to New York. And I think there was one person who was ecstatic, Mr. Spartan Mike, who is obviously one of our good friends on X, who was front and center for this one, for his little cameo there. So shout out to him. But yeah, that was kind of it for the day one stuff. There's another bit coming up a bit later that is in my random musings that I'll touch on when it comes to what happens sort of between day one and day two. So if we move on to sort of day 2 and 3, day 2 started with Joe showing his hand to the others in the meetings, saying that the focus was Kaleb McKinstry and Kamari Lassiter. And then we cut to the draft room, and the Saints have traded up and taken Kool-Aid, and the next pick, 42, the Texans take Lassiter, which kind of kills the Giants' plans. You turn back the clock, and we don't trade for Brian Burns. We have, I think it was the 39th picks. We probably have our choice of the two of them. Dan, do you reckon cornerback was definitely, I think it kind of killed the vibe a little bit in the room, didn't it? As soon as both of them went off there. Do you think the Brian Burns trade is going to overshadow this, hopefully?
No, I don't think it will. I think the Burns trade was worth it, and I fully hope and expect that that trade will work out. Yeah, it would have been great to pick up McKinstry or Lassiter at 39 if we were still there. But I think once those two players are gone, I think the mood might have dropped a little bit, but almost instantaneously you see that the next plan is in place. That, like, right, who's next on the list? Who's next on the board? Tyler Nubin's there. Yeah, best safety in the class. And he fell nicely into our lap. So I don't think they were necessarily too disappointed. But at the same time, at the end of the day, we got a fantastic safety in Tyler Nubin. And obviously going into the third round as well, that's why we got our corner.
Yes, Shane, McKinstry and Lassiter. I know you had McKinstry in your top 5. I can't remember where. Lassiter wasn't.
He weren't in my top 5. I don't know if you might have had him in my top 10 potentially. I did like Lassiter. But I mean, like, people turning around and saying, "Oh, yeah, if we hadn't given up Brian Burns, we could have got one of them." Could we? No one knows. Because let's face facts, everyone knows the Giants needed DB help. So what's stopping the Saints already moved up to 41 to go and get their guy? What's saying that Saints and the Texans might not have jumped up in front of us to get both of them anyway? So it's all turning around and saying, "Oh, well, if we'd have got people like to play this game, oh, well, if we'd have stayed here, we'd have got this player." Well, no, because the dominoes would have fell differently. Yeah, you don't know how it would have played out. So when people say, "Oh, if we miss a field goal, we probably don't give up that touchdown down there," but you genuinely don't know. You're kind of just trying to play a guessing game. So, it is what it is. At the end of the day, we needed pass rush help. We've got Brian Burns. We've got a great safety in Tyler Newbin, and obviously later on, which we'll go on to in a bit, we drafted a cornerback anyway. Who hopefully he's going to progress and develop the way we want him to.
Yeah. So obviously, Dan, you spoke about Newbin there, and the fact that the next up was that pre-planned meeting where I think Joe was talking to a few of the guys, just saying, "Look, if the 2 corners are gone, then we will pivot to safety." And then they revealed that Newbin was that top safety. Prior to that pick, you see Bowen and Joe having a conversation about him, saying he's blue, and we'll come on to that a little bit later. The he's blue comment.
Blue.
A ball hawk. He has leadership.
I did wonder what they were meaning at first by that. Just putting it out there, I was like, "What do you mean he's blue?"
I assumed blue.
Are they singing a song here?
I thought blue chip prospect straight away. Obviously, it was.
Yeah, true.
It is revealed later, kind of what blue means, but he's a ball hawk. He has leadership, communication, checks all the boxes. And Bowen's key thing here was can contribute year 1. And then obviously we spoke about the cornerback there, and we see Joe talking to Bowen and Henderson about Phillips being a 3-down nickel. And obviously then Joe explaining to Mara that Phillips is the last corner that they would be fired up about before going for what they would call a more developmental one. They showed a little bit of the Phillips interview with Dabes, and I haven't seen a lot from Drew Phillips, but he came across really well there. I thought that what he said kind of ticked all the boxes in the terms of somebody who's going to be tough, which is one of those 3 mantras. So, it felt like they gave them enough time, but it also felt weirdly rushed in a way. I don't know about you two, if you felt that. I know there was a lot to cram in that last episode, but do you feel like maybe we could have seen a little bit more about the reasonings behind that, Dan?
Yeah, I do agree with that. Obviously, there was a lot of, we had to cover the whole draft plus, little bits afterwards as well. So there was a lot covered in that 35 minutes or whatever it was. So I'm not surprised that little sort of details were missed, but it would have been nice to have a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like I feel like this episode covered a lot of stuff that we've already seen before. We've already seen the draft room stuff. We've already seen players arriving at the facility. I didn't really care for that, to be honest. I didn't need to see 30 seconds a minute of Malik Neighbours being interviewed, because guess what? I've seen him being interviewed before. I'd rather have kind of got a little bit more into why we went with them players, or a little bit into the private workouts or the private meetings.
To see some like real in-depth, like in it, sort of his interview with the team, or his workout at his pro day or something like that, to see more detail about him, the player, than necessarily see his interview and everything like that. I think that would have been better. Yeah,
because I feel like we kind of got nothing with Tyler Newbin, other than like him being in the facility, which, as I say, we've seen that before. It would just be nice to maybe see some behind the scenes stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you think about, if we move on to day 3, that was even more streamlined. We saw reviews on Theo Johnson, Tyrone Tracy, and Darius Musow. Theo reads out a text that says he's a straight dog and impressed at the Senior Bowl, didn't turn down a practice snap. And then Brandon Brown echoes that by saying, you don't really know how explosive he is until you see him, and you don't know how big he is until you see him. And then it was bang, straight into Brandon Brown talking about the Tyrone Tracy pick and how they looked at less the negative stuff that everyone else was focusing on about his age and his lack of production at running back, seeing as he was only a one-year player there, essentially, and looking more at the fact of former receiver will help in the passing game. He's a 3-down back potentially, and also that he was near the top in explosive plays per touch. And I think when you're looking at a prospect on day 3, who's near the top in explosive plays per touch, I think that's almost like a deal changer if you can really unlock the potential there. But yeah, that's all we've really saw. I mean, I'll get to it in the sort of random musing bits a little bit later, but Musa almost felt like an afterthought and was just tied in with Dave's wife and Joe Shane's wife meeting at an establishment. So I kind of
who we
did
picked?
yeah.
Him from Hawaii. Oh, okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah,
especially that pick. I feel like that was probably the pick of the draft where, it was probably kind of like, I don't really know much about him, in all honesty. Me and Kev kind of do look into like as much as we can, but I think I don't get speaking for Kev, but I think Kev was kind of along the lines of me, where it was okay, I need to have a look into Musa a little bit more, and it kind of felt a little bit shitty that like there was a little bit of a detailed look into Johnson. Breon commented on Tracy, and then you leave it to the GM and the manager's wife for Musa. Like, I felt like for him there, to be honest with you. Like, could have at least, like, it literally just took 30 seconds as to why he was drafted.
Mm-hmm. It didn't even need to have any input from any of the actual Giants coaches or anything, did it? Lee Shriver could have quite easily just done it as the narrator, explained about him, and on we move. So, yeah.
I would say as well, though, sorry, just one last thing is, I'd like to have got interviews with the scouts about the players. Like maybe like
what they thought of them.
Yeah, what they thought of them, or maybe who was it that first discovered Darius Musa? Who's recommended Darius Musa? Why did you recommend him? What was the thought process? What stood out? Just I'd like to have. I feel like we got that interview with the scouts, but it was kind of like generic interviews rather than the scouts particularly talking about players that we did go on to draft. I think that could have been a nice inclusion.
Yeah, and then obviously at the end they had the kind of performance review bit with the scouts, didn't they? The sort of day after the draft, and I get why they didn't show a lot of it. I'm guessing that's a very in-house process, and I'm sure there's all kinds of HR alarm bells going off as they're thinking about doing something like that. But it would have been nice just to see a little bit more about the job that they do, as opposed to like, oh, you're a really good teammate, I really like your work ethic. Like, well, yeah, you kind of hope that people have decent work ethic. That's why they've been there. There was the slightest of slightest touches on one of the scouts, and his name escapes me, about the fact that he's been here since like 2015 and that he's like the veteran of the group. And I liked that because it gave him a little bit more sort of humanity and, gave him a bit more personality. And that's something that they were really good at in earlier episodes. But yeah, it did just kind of seem a little kind of glossed over. Right, random musings, which
Jeremy Brett is the guy you're thinking of.
Thank you. So yeah, random musings, color codes. He is blue. What does blue mean? So the big board was shown a couple of times, with the most telling bit at the end of the episode where the draft was complete, and all the names are on there. Some of the players were color coded, and the colors were seen as blue, grey, red, purple, pink, and yellow. QB Joe Milton was the only yellow on there, and it's kind of hard to know what that is, but it's rumored to be different position than advertised. So he was a QB. Chances are some teams graded him as maybe being turned into a tight end. So that's the kind of logical explanation for that one. Doug Analytics, who's on X, and I highly recommend following him because he does some outstanding work, put a post out where people have speculated what the others means, and this is kind of what we have as an agreement as a fan base at the moment. So blue was an all-round good leader, teammate, and person, and Drake May, Marvin Harrison, Joe Alt were all blue, but also from our draft class, Nubin and Musa were also both marked up for their leadership. The red was medical concerns, which they had on both Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, who were both drafted by the Eagles. So the Eagles had like quite a lot of character concern, medical concern, undersized players that the Giants had marked. So purple was character concerns, which there were a few sort of, of the wide receivers. Nate Wiggins, who defensive tackle, I think he is, isn't he? Jane, what was Nate Wiggins?
Cornerback.
Oh, okay. Who am I thinking of? Maybe I'm just seeing.
Maybe Byron Murphy, or who was the lad who the Texas lad who escapes my name? He dropped into the second round. He's like 380 pounds. T'Vondre Sweat. I don't think he. Who's the other Texan lad?
Yeah, I know who you mean. I'm
sure it was a Texan lad. I'm sure one of them was taken before the draft as first round talent. We're going to drop into the second round.
Yeah. Pink was undersized, measurement concern, which Chris Abrams Drain, which I remember one of you guys being quite high on. He was touted as that. And then Gray was like multiple positions. You saw a lot of offensive linemen, but interestingly, Drew Phillips was marked as one of the Gray prospects, and I'm guessing that's because he's seen as kind of like an outside or inside cornerback, which is definitely what we had. Steve's just said he might have to implement this on Football Manager, and I've got to agree with you.
Great idea, Steve. It's a great idea.
So I thought that the color coding thing was really interesting. Like probably one of the more kind of interesting aspects of the show, where it allows us to decipher exactly what's going on there without actually revealing the hand. So we're probably all completely wrong, and they'll come out at some point, and we'll all have pie on our face. But earlier I mentioned about between day one and day two, there was one piece that really stood out to me, and that was Joe Shane talking about wide receiver APY. He was talking about the market value for wide receiver had gone through the roof, and that having an explosive young player under a cost-controlled rookie deal was now a huge plus, and mainly because players like that very rarely hit free agency, and if they do, they cost a lot. And I think we're seeing that right now with a lot of wide receivers. I mean, CD Lamb's still holding out, I believe, hasn't been paid. DJ Moore got a hell of a contract from the Bears to stay for the entirety of Kaleb Williams' rookie deal. So, quite like that. Is that something that you guys, Dan, I'll go to you first, that you guys are happy that we look into, like look at the positional value of what some of these big players come up at in free agency, and how we do get a lot more value by drafting them?
Yeah, I think his comments about that APY were absolutely spot on. To have a talent like Neighbours tied up for a relatively small amount of money in comparison to picking someone up at his level in free agency, I think it was, like I said, it was spot on. I think it's good. I think having positional value, like you're looking at APY, I think it's a good tool. It's a good way to sort of look at it, and a sort of good like yardstick almost to sort of say, like, this is how much money I've got to spend, how much I'm wanting to spend on a receiver, how much I want to spend on a tackle, how much I want to spend on the. So actually having a look at the APY is probably is a good way to do it, really.
Absolutely. Shane, you were saying, obviously we saw a lot of the Nubin stuff on day two, and we'd already seen him arriving at the facility. One thing I don't know if you guys agree with me here, I was a massive fan of them showing Dex talking to them during his welcome. It kind of really shone a light on Dex as being that kind of veteran team leader and kind of captain that we want him to be, by turning around and saying, look, welcome, but you're a ball hawk, keep being you and be you always, kind of thing. I just thought that was really, really good to see him doing that. And then lastly, obviously, I've always ended the random musings on a lighter note, and I just wanted to sort of touch on the family run business kind of feel of the Giants, and how that was really well put across at the end. we saw it a few times with Joe Shane's family and Dave's getting his birthday call in earlier episodes, but it was kind of really driven home at the end of this one. We saw Joe Shane and Dave's wives talking to each other, as we've already said. I thought it was interesting that Dave's wife and Joe are both chill, whereas Joe's wife and Dave's are apparently both hyper. So it's almost weird that the head coach GM dynamic works because that person's
Opposites
married
attract.
to the other type of person.
Opposites attract, right?
Yeah. And then we also saw the entire coaching staff and front office staff at Tommy's Tavern and Tap celebrating the job well done. And Joe kind of saying in a VOD, it's one big family here. It always has been. The Giants have a very good reputation for that. We're all in this together. It's something that's always been said about the Giants and something that's always come from sort of Wellington Mara era to now. It is nice to have that family feel. I know if you have a look at some of the ratings that come out from the NFLPA towards the end of the season, the Giants always rate very highly in that. And obviously Darren Waller's come out and said that he thinks very highly of the team and that they pay for his massages while he was here. But I think the best thing of the whole episode was just the end with back in the New York groove. Shane's back in the New York groove.
It was sweet, wasn't it?
Having flashbacks to last year's trip and how good that was. But Shane, did it at least get you a little bit hyped for the season?
The look says it all.
It's not that it didn't get me hyped, but I just think like I enjoyed seeing the behind the scenes stuff. But I just feel like every single year I fall into this thing of training camp and things looking well, and I get excited and then I get disappointed. So this year I'm just like, you know what? I'm keeping up to date with what's happening with the Giants and doing these weekly podcasts, but at the same time, I'm just thinking 8th of September. That's when it really matters. Like, I don't care if we go undefeated in pre-season. I don't care if we win out and shut out Lions, Texans and Jets. I also don't care if we lose every single game because it's pre-season. It's just about fitness, people getting reps, etc. I just think that my expectations are a little bit toned back more than normal.
A little bit tempered.
Yeah. I know they're usually quite tempered anyway. But you know, yeah. Look, I'll give credit. I've really enjoyed the Hard Knocks episodes. I didn't really enjoy episode 5, as I said, just because I feel there was a lot of stuff that we did already see, and there was things I felt that they left out, kind of thing. But you know,
were you ever excited for Christmas? Is one of the greatest questions.
You open your presents, you get to the football unboxing day, and you think, okay, 25th of December next year. Now that's the next one. That's what matters. You know, you've always got to look towards the next one. You can't reflect on the past at the end of the day. The past is gone.
Oh, God.
Now, like you say, you know, I have really enjoyed the Hard Knocks episodes. Some great insights, in particular, in regards to kind of, you know, free agency and the Senior Bowl and at the Combine, etc. But, you know, just following what Keith said, I think one of the things that I'm most proud about being a Giants fan is that, you know, and I know it's easy to say this, and I feel like there's meaning behind it, but we are a classy organisation. We don't do these are little bit harsh words. We don't do things in a scummy way. We don't do things in a nasty way. We try to do things the right way, the professional way, and always treating players like they're not just a player, like they're not just a number. And I think that's one of the things that I most enjoy about being a Giants fan.
Completely agree. I mean, I loved the series in general. I thought that the ending was fantastic. The back in the New York groove was a great way to end the series. Like I said, that sort of last shot of the sort of panning out over the training center with Shane stood on his balcony, I thought was pretty sweet. I'm disappointed it's over. It would have been nice to see a glimpse into DJ's rehab, and sort of see like the sort of stages he's been through over that sort of period of time. and also more of what the off-season looks like from the veterans' perspective as well. I think what I said to you earlier, we were talking earlier, Graham, is very front office based and focused, and obviously focused on what they were doing rather than in terms of what happens to the whole team. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining in the slightest, because the five episodes have been great to watch, and it's been a great insight into the team and into that front office that we don't really see much of. But it would have been nice just to sort of flip it and see a little bit of sort of into the lives of the players during this off-season part. See a little bit of what's going on with Daniel Jones and his rehab. Kind of like Hard Knocks is. You do see a little glimpse into the players themselves. You see them like with their wives at home, relaxing during camp, and the players that get injured. You do see a little bit of their sort of rehab and how they're coming back to full strength. So it would have been nice to see that side of things, but hey, we beggars can't be choosers. We can't sort of knock what they've shown us and what we've got over the last 5 weeks. And I'm very, very grateful for what we've got over the last 5 weeks. And it just goes to show that we are a classy organisation. When they're not gonna air anything that could potentially be detrimental to that organisation. And I think everything that's been put into these 5 episodes has spun the Giants organisation in a very positive light. So, I loved it. And I think it'd be great to see more of it, but unfortunately, we're not going to.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing here is the fact that we're watching off season from January to the end of March time, sort of beginning of April. So what we're seeing is a condensed version of 2 months that's focusing on a aspect that the NFL haven't shown before in Hard Knocks, which is why you get the what we've seen essentially in none of the player stuff. And I think the player stuff is very much reserved for Hard Knocks, which we'll see with the Bears when that starts in 2 weeks, 2 weeks. So, if you like the Hard Knocks series and you like NFL, I mean, I'll be watching the Bears series because I really do find it interesting, and you will get a more personable feel for the players and less of the front office. It'll be interesting to see if we get another off-season one, or if this is a once only. It'd be very interesting to see if we ever get another Giants Hard Knocks, at least in the foreseeable future, or whether that is scratch the Hard Knocks itch for the NFL and John Mara can go back to relaxing. But
I think we're done for a while. I can't see them having the Hard Knocks cameras back in for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Evening, Noel. All the way from New York. Thanks very much, man. We appreciate you listening, and I'm glad you're enjoying it. But on the whole, Hard Knocks, it's been fantastic, and I think any Giants fan that didn't think it's been fantastic, I mean, I'd be interested in talking to them to find out why they didn't think it was great. But I think we all loved it, and it was definitely a highlight of our week watching that episode over the last 5 weeks. So, looking forward to going into the whole series next week, and giving our sort of thoughts on the whole series and our highlights as well. So, lots to look forward to when talking about that. All right, that's Hard Knocks done and in the bag. We're going to finish off this episode with finishing our state of play roster breakdown. And it's finally the turn of our cornerbacks to come under the spotlight. There's a lot of things finishing this week. Finishing Hard Knocks, finishing state of play. Hopefully we've got more content to come next week, Craig. I'm sure we have. I know we have. We're talking Hard Knocks next week and other things as well. We've got 12 players to get our teeth into. Shane, going to hand over to you first. Are we going to see Banks being closed on Sunday again this year?
Yeah, just before getting to the 12 players, there is a 13th player that has been claimed this evening by the Giants. After the Philadelphia Eagles signed former Giants and Commanders offensive lineman Nick Gates, they then went on to release Mario Goodrich. He's now landed with the Giants. I picked him up for the waiver wire. In 2023, tag on him. He appeared in 4 games for the Eagles, making 1 start, had 5 total tackles across 110 snaps. He was targeted 10 times in coverage. He allowed 10 receptions for 118 yards and 1 touchdown.
Whee!
So
Brilliant.
I suppose he can only get better. It can't get worse than allowing 100% reception.
At the bar low and exceed.
Exactly. So yeah, so we have signed him today. But yeah, going on to the players that we're kind of going to be covering. Obviously, we've not got Goodrich's details fully because he literally was signed in the last sort of 15-20 minutes. But in regards to Deonte Banks, his rookie year, he flashed, albeit with inconsistencies in his play. But, you know, Banks did line up against number one receivers week in, week out, which is more than most rookies are asked to do. You know, most rookies have the luxury of going to a team that have already got a cornerback one in place. And also, you know, let's not forget the scheme that Banks was involved in. It was Wink Martindale's scheme, kind of put Banks on an island at times. You know, he was almost exclusively one-on-one, man-to-man coverage on the outside. So, you know, there's very little room for mistakes or lapses in concentration. And obviously, one of the things that Banks was praised about last year and also throughout the season is his goldfish memory, in the fact that once one play is done, it's gone, it's in the past, it's over. Kind of looks at how I look at Christmas. You know, that one's gone, let's look to the next one. Now, considering he's targeted almost 100 times, his completion percentage of 57.6 is impressive for a young player that's still finding his feet in the league. Just some stats to throw out. He was targeted 92 times, which was the 16th most in the league last year, and allowed 53 receptions, which tied him for 28th. He had 2 interceptions, which was 19th in the league, and allowed a passer rating of 84.7 with a coverage grade of 48.6. Now, without a shadow of a doubt, Banks is going to be the undisputed number one cornerback this year. No Adoree Jackson on the team even. He's going to will need to play like it. You look at the kind of players we're up against this year, the teams we're playing against. You know, Banks is going to be coming up one-on-one against some of the best in the league right now. Jefferson, Lamb, Metcalf, Jamar Chase, and obviously Smith or Breon, whichever one they want to put up against Banks as well with Philly. Switching to Bowen's zone coverage should still see the Giants play to his strengths and could assist him in regards to cutting down the 12 penalties that he had last year, 8 of which were accepted. Now, obviously, we've talked about it numerous times and even on this show as well. This year, Giants drafted Malik Neighbours out of LSU, number 6 overall. Will, coming up against Neighbours in camp, help Banks, who I want to say that played each other at college as well, at least once. But I'd have to double check that one. But is it going to help Banks, who in his rookie year was up against less explosive receivers, Craig?
Yeah, I think if you look at the players he was up against last year, Slayton was the vet receiver, and then you had second year Wandale, who was coming off of an injury, and you had Hyatt, who obviously was a 3rd round draft pick. So Wyatt's got the speed, but maybe not the acumen of the route tree. Whereas I think Neighbours does kind of offer him a slightly different test. And I think you've already seen that in the training camp footage that's come out, that those two kind of have a weird camaraderie between the two of them, considering they're 2 very, very different positions. And I do think it's that very much a case of iron sharpens iron between those two, that Neighbours will be better because Banks is, you know, he's definitely not one of the lesser number one cornerbacks out there. You know, he's still a bit green. It's only coming into year 2, but he's still good, and he proved it against some top tier receivers last year. But also on the flip side, the more often that he's put up against these top receivers, the better he can become, and the more nuances he's going to find. The game will start to slow down in year 2 for Banks as well. So I think it's a great thing for his development.
Yeah, mate. I think it's putting a receiver like Neighbours against Banks. They're both going to learn. Obviously, they're both very young. They're both, one's in rookie season, one's in second season, and they both seem very, very hungry to learn and to improve. And they're gonna help each other get better for sure. I think it's great for Banks to come up against a receiver like him. because like you said, he's going to come up against the likes of Justin Jefferson, CD Lamb, DK Metcalf. Well, Malik Neighbors is a very similar type receiver to those players. So, excuse me. So it's setting him up quite nicely for the season, and some of the receivers he's going to come up against.
Right. So if we flip to who his CB2 will potentially be, then we're looking at Cor'Dale Flott. Flott was switched in 2023 from the outside to nickel as the Giants wanted a more sort of speedy, lengthy option to counteract the opponents on the shallow routes. He appeared in 14 games for 7 starts, and he became what you kind of call a disruptor on the cornerback core. He made 36 total tackles, forced a fumble, 5 passes defended, and also snagged his first ever career interception. He was targeted 62 times with 40 receptions allowed. 1 interception, had a passer rating allowed of 95.6 and a coverage grade of 59.4. So kind of, average run of the mill, but like we said, was moved from outside cornerback to slot. His expectations for this year were obviously for him to continue in the slot until Dable kind of revealed his hand quite early on in the training camp process and said that he's going to go outside again. So, it's going to be an interesting camp for Flott. There were a lot of concerns over his size and his slightness, especially to be an outside corner, but he's going to have to prove it again. And, as I said, Daves has said that he's the favourite for that number 2 spot. He has the intangibles to do it, but we just hope he doesn't get bullied. But he's also only 22. And despite being in his 3rd year in the NFL, he's actually younger than some of the rookies on the team. I think he's like the 5th youngest player on our roster. And the only one who's actually younger than him in years is Malik Neighbors. So he has plenty of time to grow. The thing is that the Giants can't really afford for him to grow slowly. He really needs to show some maturity this season and solidify himself as a starter. Otherwise, we're going to be in a bit of trouble.
Yeah. One player that could potentially step in and help out, McCloud. It was a strange 2023 for him. You saw the Giants give more snaps to Trey Hawkins and Adoree Jackson, who, let's face it, struggled last season, despite McCloud showing his superiority when he was on the field and showing he was potentially a better player when he was on the field. He appeared in all 17 games, but he only started 3 and only had 312 snaps on defense, which was about a quarter of all defensive snaps, if I remember rightly, something like that, around that. Which is almost half of what he'd had in his previous seasons as well. So, his snap count was significantly down. But despite that, he recorded his highest career coverage grade and only allowed 1 touchdown all season and snagged his first career interception. So, in the snaps he was on the field, he had a pretty solid showing. And he also contributed in all 3 phases of special teams as well, recording the joint 3rd highest amount of snaps on special teams. So, we've got a wily veteran there in McCloud. Stats-wise, last year, he was targeted 22 times. He allowed 15 receptions with 1 interception and allowed a passer rating of 83.9. And his coverage grade was not tied for 19th best in the league, 80.7. So he did really, really well in coverage. Expectations for this year for McCloud with the backfoot injury issues that the Giants have faced in the past few years. Solid depth options are a must, and he ticks all the boxes. The Giants may have picked up some vets, but he offers so much more to his versatility and special teams contributions. So, it's if Flott's struggling, McCloud's going to be there to step in when he needs to. So I've got, not necessarily, I wouldn't say high hopes for McCloud, but I know he's one of those players that can just step in, do the job, and you not really have too many concerns about him. So he's definitely a good vet to have on this roster. Last up on the outside then, Craig.
Yep. So Trey Hawkins, he impressed during preseason despite being a day 3 pick in 2023 and was rewarded with a spot on the roster. He'd go on to start the week 1 game and appear in 17 games across the season, but it wasn't all good and he struggled as a rookie, which is to be expected. He was targeted heavily by opposing offenses who tried to test him as much as they possibly could. And unfortunately, he did struggle, allowing an 80.8% completion percentage on 26 targets. Didn't snag an interception, but actually dropped 2 as well. So bit of a rough start for Hawkins. 26 times he was targeted, 21 receptions allowed, a 157.2 passer rating allowed as well, and a coverage grade of 47.2. So, not what you'd expect, but, temper your expectations slightly. Day 3 pick at cornerback, notoriously a very difficult position to come in as a rookie. Trial by fire is not the word, you know. Now, the Giants will have to show patience with Hawkins and hope that a more zonal scheme fits their development plan for him and will allow him to read the game better. Like I said, many cornerbacks struggle in their first season, and Hawkins' collegiate experience coming from a smaller school sort of saw him face an uphill battle from the start against receivers who are probably more agile and bigger than he's ever faced before. So, Dan, I'll start with you. 3 players all on the roster last year. 2 probably nailed on. Do you see all 3 of them sticking?
I think I'd be surprised if Trey Hawkins wasn't still on the roster. I think the coaches liked what they saw with him last year, and I think Dave's liked what he sees from him this year. And with the new DC and Shane Bowen, I think they're going to give him a shot. Banks and Flott are nailed on. McCloud, I think, is probably nailed on as well, potentially. So I think we could potentially all 4 of those guys stick back on the roster this year.
Shane, would you like to see them stick with Hawkins? And do you think if he dropped to the practice squad, he'd get snapped up quite quickly?
I don't know if he would get snapped up, to be honest. I mean, I think Hawkins and McCloud could be ones to kind of keep an eye on as to that might not make it, in particular McCloud. Because I think, has he been put into the slot potentially? I don't think I think he's been struggling outside.
Yeah. I was going to say that he has been put into the slot and been taking snaps there with the first team during the last few days of training camp, actually.
Yeah, and I want to say, I'm sure I read somewhere that's because he was kind of struggling on the outside, so it could be a case of maybe he needs to kind of show something in the slot more than anything else. I mean, I'd imagine we'll keep him because obviously he's the veteran in that room, realistically. But I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he's like a little bit of a dark horse that could potentially be cut that you don't see coming. And also Trey Hawkins, I think he could very well have a struggle, especially with some of the other cornerbacks that we're going to be talking about shortly.
Either of you want to weigh in on Peter Joyce's comment, because my thoughts on both of them are not sanitary.
I know Peter would like to see Jackson back.
Sorry, what was that?
I know Dan would like to see Jackson back.
Really, Shane?
Oh, he's a hot one. It's Jackson or Apple. Which one you're picking? You got to sign one of them.
A reluctant signature for Adoree Jackson because Eli Apple. No.
I'll get Jackson because he can return punts. Yes, I'm never letting that go.
I was going to say, didn't Eli Apple get a ring? But no, he cost the Bengals theirs, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yeah, he did. But no, Peter, nobody fancies Adoree Jackson or Eli Apple. They can both stay as free agents for all I care.
Everybody knows my thoughts on Tyrod Taylor. I'd rather have Taylor back than Adoree Jackson.
True that. Very true. But interesting that Nick McCloud's been taking snaps in the slot because next up we've got some slot guys, and the first one of them being Andrew Phillips. In his 4th season at Kentucky, he saw a huge increase in his snaps, recording almost double his count from the previous season, while also seeing a lot more action outside corner as well, rather than the slot where he was previously deployed. So potential to move him outside and move McCloud into the slot. His increase in snaps didn't phase him, and it gave him an opportunity to showcase his zone coverage abilities as well, something that Shane Bowen likes to do. His 23 run stops led the SEC, and his 5 pass breakups were second most on the team. He was targeted 57 times, allowed 38 receptions, didn't pick off any balls, but allowed a passer rating of 106.9 with a coverage grade of 72.9. He seems to have had a good start to camp, already lining up with the first team at slot cornerback after Flott's kick out to the outside. His ability to travel well with the receivers, versatility and athleticism could see him win the starting role over others. However, he missed his missed tackle rate and a lack of ball production could see him used more in a rotation. But, slot outside, it all seems to be very flexible at the moment. But there's one player that we didn't expect to see on the roster this year. Shane, who's that player?
That's my man. Big play, Darnay.
Big play, Darnay.
Never make a play, Darnay, more like. So Holmes lost the cornerback battle last year with Flott. And due to this, he's seen limited opportunities in defence, with 77 of his 123 snaps coming in weeks 10 and 11, where incidentally he happened to have an interception in each. Big play or what? His biggest contribution was on special teams, where he would play 45% of the overall snaps during the season. And he found finishing second on the team in tackles with 5, but he did commit 2 penalties. In regards to the cornerback position, though, he was targeted 15 times, allowing 12 receptions, picking up those 2 interceptions that I mentioned. He had a passer rating of 72.9 with a coverage grade of 68.7. I'll be honest, I think Darnay deserves a little bit of credit. He's took them like pay cuts, which many people might go, oh yeah, take a pay cut, but he always seems like he's just kind of got his head down and got on with it. He's got that professionalism about him, and I do admire that, and I think in regards to his expectations this year, he has showed that if he's called upon in the slot, he showed last year that if called upon, he can slot in. But he's susceptible to giving up big plays still. There's that word again, big play. In his competition this season, he's going to be Drew Phillips. And if the rookie struggles, he could be called upon again. But I have seen quite a few people as well say that, let's not forget Darnay's best season come a couple of years ago under the DC's name who escapes me. One of you guys will hit me with it.
Yeah.
Or before Wink, what was his name?
Patrick Graham,
thank you very much. Some of his best play come under Patrick Graham, who didn't play such an aggressive man-to-man scheme that Wink Martindale is. And now that Shane Bowen's coming in, I'm hoping that maybe we see the Darnay Holmes that we kind of seen, especially in his rookie season, more than we did see over the last couple of seasons.
Potentially. Craig, let's round out the slot.
Yep, so Trey Herndon, 2023 saw Herndon plays most games since 2020. However, he wasn't probably as involved as he would have liked to be. After spending the majority of his career split between inside and outside, he had to settle for a slot cornerback spot, recording a career high 424 snaps at the position. And although he was used in rotation there, he did still deliver a productive season. He recorded career highs in both overall and coverage grade, while as a rusher recorded highs in grade, QB hits, and hurries. He was targeted 57 times, allowing 45 receptions. He had no interceptions, a passer rating allowed of 119.7, and a coverage grade of 73.1. Now, Herndon is a vet who can play multiple positions in the backfield and has previously played at a high level for the Jags. Injuries derailed that promising start in the NFL, but he could and should provide stout competition for Holmes and could even replace him as the vet vying for that starting role. Shane, Phillips is almost a lock. We know about Joe Shane's history with his draft picks in that year, always making the team. And he, as we saw in last night's Hard Knocks, he was kind of drafted as a need, really. Do you think Holmes or Herndon are going to be the veteran foil at slot behind him?
I'm going with big play. I think big play Darnay is going to get that veteran position behind Drew, and maybe even Drew's kind of starts the season on the bench. We kind of seen what happened last year when we sort of thrust Trey Hawkins into the starting role, kind of had them struggles and never really bounced back. And one thing that you don't want to do is potentially kind of damage or ruin a rookie's confidence. So, the last thing you'd want to do is see Drew Phillips thrusting the first 2-3 game weeks, then basically be told, you're not good enough, we're dropping you. All of a sudden, it just dents his confidence and you don't know. I mean, we'd be interested to see how Trey Hawkins bounce back this year, but I think Holmes, as I've mentioned, being back in this kind of scheme as opposed to Wink Martindale's is definitely going to be a benefit for him. So I'd like to see him get the backup job.
Dan?
I'd be surprised it wasn't Darnay Holmes. In all honesty, I think there's a reason they brought him back. He was scheduled to be a free agent this year, and they brought him back. So there's a reason for that, and I think he'll get that backup role behind Andrew Phillips. But like you said, will Drew Phillips be thrust in the spotlight to start the season, or will it be sort of a rotation to start off with to see, just to sort of figure it out and which, who works best in which scheme, which sets, So I can definitely see Holmes being the veteran backup for sure.
I think that's one key thing that we kind of need to highlight here with a lot of these cornerbacks is that it's a brand new defensive coordinator, it's a brand new scheme, which also means that it's a brand new way of playing. So it's not just the players who have been there before that are going to be learning. It's everybody is going to be learning. Your rookies, everyone's doing install. So there's going to be limited opportunities for some of these players. And you could find that certain players do flash and, the perceptions we have on certain people might change. So it's going to be interesting. Both Darnay and Herndon and Phillips also obviously all have versatility and can play multiple positions. But Darnay has that kind of special teams acumen as well. And that's always worth a tip of the hat, especially at the cornerback position.
Yeah, massively. You never know, you might start returning punts.
I think we've got enough speedsters to do that now.
Yeah, true that. Very true. All right, let's look at the rest of the roster. Who's going to be fighting for a starting spot, or a roster spot, should I say? Even it's David Long Jr. Last year, after 4 up and down seasons with the Rams, he hit free agency and was snapped up by Las Vegas. He appeared in 8 games, starting 1, but then he was waived. He was quickly claimed by the Panthers and appeared in their weeks 11 and 12 games, but again was waived after that. And he was then picked up off waivers this time by the Packers. And despite appearing in 3 games, he didn't record any stats, which is unusual for appearing in 3 games, not record any stats, not even half as tackle. But there we go.
I mean, if you get 4 snaps, then
I mean, yeah.
I
suppose depends on the snap count. Yeah, that's true. Expectations for this season. He was signed at the beginning of May and appeared in minicamp. However, the Giants signed Trey Herndon following that, and he seems to be the preferred veteran at this time. There is a chance that he could make the roster, but it looks like a pretty slim one at that. So a little bit of camp fodder, and I would expect, unless he really sort of has an outstanding camp, I would expect to see him released come cut down day. Shane, he's up next.
Yeah, next we've got Breon Borders, 7-year veteran. He ran the 2023 season by signing with the Falcons. However, 3 days later, he was suspended by the league for performance-enhancing drugs. Brilliant. That's great. Great to read. He ain't making the roster, then he said.
What's smart, tough, and dependable about that?
Well, I mean, he ain't very smart because he got caught.
Maybe he's
True,
dependable
very
on
true.
them.
Would stay in Atlanta until cut day and would later sign with the Patriots practice squad once his suspension was up. And he was called up for one game, but he did not appear. He's now on his 12 different teams since coming to the league in 2017. How many drugs has this man been taking?
I'd like to state none of us support or endorse performance-enhancing drugs. Just putting it out there.
He's appeared in 32 games, and he does have a history with Shane Bowen from 2020 to 2021. But he's a long shot to make the roster since he was only signed 2 days ago. I mean, I'd say he's potentially a long shot to make the roster for other reasons, but I'm not going to get into that because we'll get cancelled.
Yeah, probably best we don't. There we go. Greg, next up.
Oh, the brilliantly named Stantley Thomas Oliver, who sounds like he went to Eton.
He's got 3 names.
He's got 3 first names.
Can't trust him. Don't trust someone who's got 3 first names. Nah. Put him now.
So in August 2023, the Panthers cut Stantley and then signed him to their practice squad. He was subsequently placed on IR due to a thigh injury in mid-September and was released 9 days later. The Giants then signed him to their practice squad at the end of October when he was fit again, and that's where he would remain for the entirety of the season. Unfortunately, he is likely to be nothing more than a camp body. He has 94 defensive snaps in his first 2 years in the league, but his last was in the season closer back in 2021, and since then he's struggled with injuries. At the moment, he is also on the non-football injury list.
Bye then. Oh, poor Stanley. There we go. Next up, we've got Kaleb Hayes, an undrafted free agent. Hayes signed for the Jags and spent the entire preseason there last year. He was released on cutdown day and then signed by the Giants to their practice squad. And then although he was never called up to the main roster, he's displayed outstanding athleticism in college and pre-draft process, and he'll need to rely on this to stand out. He does have special teams experience from college, but it is fairly unlikely to help him secure a roster spot. I think last but not least, we've got one more after that, or is it 2 more? One more. Last but not least in the train.
Alex Johnson. I'll try not to slander this one. After 4 years of big part play, Johnson was able to start for UCLA in 2023. And he wasted no time showing what he could do in coverage, finishing the season with a 40.7 quarterback rating allowed. He had a few standout games in college, such as week 2 against San Diego State, where he may have only had 37 defensive snaps, but he did record 2 interceptions. And then in week 11, he recorded a season high 6 tackles. Now, it is likely that we'll end up seeing Johnson on the practice squad due to the young depth ahead of him. But the Giants have given him a signing bonus and guaranteed money. So it's a good indication they definitely view him as a prospect for the future.
Nice. At least that's positive.
The Boston Red Sox are an American professional baseball team based in Boston. The Red Sox compete in Major League Baseball as a member club of the American League East Division.
Just in case you weren't aware who the Boston Red Sox were, my lovely
Assistant
tabletop assistant has told you who they are. There we go.
Have we become a hybrid podcast all of a sudden? Are we covering the Boston now?
I don't even know where that came from because I don't even. What did I say that was remotely like her name?
I have no idea. No idea.
Right. Apologies, listeners and viewers.
Yeah, we're definitely not Boston.
No.
So previous rosters: 2020, Bradbury, Horry Ballantyne, Isaac Yiadom, Darnay Holmes, Brandon Williams. 2021, Bradbury, the first appearance of Adoree Jackson, Rodarius Williams, big play Darnay, Josh Jackson, Keon Crossan, and everyone's favourite, Sam Beal. Since Dave's has come in, we had Adoree, Aaron Robinson, Holmes, Cor'Dale, Flott, Nick McCloud, and Justin Lane. And then last year we had Deonte Banks, Trey Hawkins, Adoree, McCloud, Flott, and Holmes. So we've pretty much always taken 6 cornerbacks on the main roster since Joe Shane has been there. A lot of our cornerbacks are either on 1-year deals or, are coming up to a contract year next year. In fact, we only have Drew Phillips, Trey Hawkins, and Deonte Banks who are here past 2025. Cor'Dale Flott has 1 more year on his deal. Alex Johnson has a 3-year deal, but obviously that all changes if he does get cut and moved on to the practice squad. So a lot of prove-it deals, it would seem, out there for the Giants. So like I said, the Giants have taken 6 cornerbacks over the last 2 years and a minimum of 2 on the practice squad. Do you see any of those bubble players making it, Shane?
I think probably the one that stands out the most for me is going to be Alex Johnson. He's someone who I'm going to be keeping a close eye on during the pre-season matches. Whether he makes it, I think he might very well be a practice squad candidate. But as mentioned, the money that they've given him, there's definitely some intrigue there with the signing bonus and guaranteed money that he receives. So he'll be the one that I think could maybe push towards making the 53. I don't think he will, but he might have the best chance.
And what about you, Dan? What do you think?
I think Alex Johnson, they obviously see potential in him. So I could see him maybe making it, but I think all of the rest, the practice squad, or even completely cut, I'd imagine, would be the likely scenario. I think we probably go with 6 again. It's worked in the past, and I don't see why it wouldn't work this year either.
Exactly.
Alrighty, that's your lot. We've gone through the entire roster. It's got to be at least 100 players, surely, because some have come and gone. We've signed new players as well, so that's a lot of players to get through. And that's it.
I can't believe I missed the offensive line.
You know what?
I'll have to wait next year now.
We can rewind and go back and bring up a couple of movies.
No, that's not fair on the listeners. The listeners have done their part. We don't want to get we don't rehash the same old rubbish on this podcast. The listeners don't need to hear that. We just have to do.
We have signed a new offensive lineman since we spoke about them in Greg Roten. So I know we spoke about them earlier. So you're lucky.
It's no coincidence that Shane was given that to talk about, though.
Yeah, I'm getting done over. You wait till week 1.
I like it. Yeah, exactly. We've got time for it, Shane. We've got time. We're not going anywhere.
We've been on for an hour and a half. We already spoke about offensive line in the past. I'm thinking of the listeners. They don't need to listen to offensive line all over again. We've covered it. Unfortunately, 2025 is going to have to wait for the next time we talk about offensive line in that level of detail, other than saying that shit every week this season. I've already accepted it, you see.
The train has left the station horrifically early.
It has. It's already chugging. That tank train is already chugging. That is your lot. That is the entire roster that we've covered. We've only got 4 weeks until the 53-man roster deadline on the 27th of August, and with the Hall of Fame game coming up tomorrow, the annual sort of pre-season kickoff. Football is well and truly back. It's the last. Last week was the last Thursday without football until February. So football is back, and it's good to be back and good to have football back. But unfortunately, that is all we have time for this evening and for this week as well. We'll be back live next week, not with one show, but with 2. Ooh, 2 shows next week. We're going to be joined we're joining the Giants Rush guys on Monday to talk about training camp. So we're mega looking forward to that. And then we'll be back in our usual slot on Wednesday as well to have a look back at the full series of Hard Knocks, revealing our favourite moments. And also we'll be bringing you 5 most important players of 2024. So very much looking forward to next week. Anything else to add before we go, lads?
No, just, it's been good sort of talking through these for the ones that I have been a part of, and kind of, now the look turns towards pre-season. Looking forward to kind of finally watching some football. I'm up early for work on Friday, but I'm half tempted to stay up for the Hall of Fame game just to see what a kickoff looks like, because that's going to be interesting and entertaining. But yeah, kind of looking forward towards that kind of first pre-season game for ourselves against Detroit on the 8th of August now.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget that it's coming up quick that our joint practice with the Lions is going to be before that game. And I think we're going to learn a lot. It's always interesting watching, your own offense go against your own defense. But when you actually start playing against other teams, and you can really start to analyze where this roster is, and that will probably bring everyone out of the woodwork on what we end up seeing. But yeah, content starts to ramp up a little bit. Little cheeky return to a week next week, and some other things in the pipeline as well that hopefully we can reveal soon.
Yeah, there's plenty to come from us over the next few weeks until the beginning of the season. Like Craig said, hopefully we'll be able to reveal more details about some of these things in the coming days and weeks. So make sure you stay tuned. Stay tuned to our socials as well. Keep your eyes on them. Because any details will no doubt release on there as well. Like I said, remember, we're back on Monday evening live with the Giants Rush, so make sure you tune in, and don't forget our week 1 meetup in Birmingham for the Vikings game. We hope to see as many Giants fans there as possible. Let's make it a blue out, not a white out, a blue out. Let's make the place blue. There we go. So yeah, mate, looking forward to the week 1 meetup as well. 5 weeks away. It's going to come around quickly, so it's all good. Make sure you check out our socials for all the latest news. Follow the links in the description. Give this episode a thumbs up as well. My thanks as ever go to Shane and to Craig for joining me, to the viewers and listeners for tuning in. We are signing off. Until next time, let's go Giants.